in the history of the reggae genre. No other artist has ever come as complete as the magnificent Gregory Isaacs. For a start, he was endowed with one of the most exquisite voices ever heard. He dressed like the Rasta James Bond in the finest suits, complete with his trademark fedora hat. He oozed imperious charm, awesome stage presence, and unrivaled swagger, not to mention professionalism in the music business that very few artists could dream of across all genres. He was also an extremely versatile reggae artist, and though one of the greatest lovers rock crooners of all time, he could also switch up and deliver songs with deep social and spiritual content. By the beginning of the 1980s, he was a bona fide international megastar, but unknown to most, Gregory Isaacs, the cool ruler, had one huge crack in his armor. That flaw was a terrible addiction to crack cocaine. It derailed his magnificent career, destroyed his body, and ultimately contributed to him dying at the age of 59. In a 2017 interview, reggae legend Don Carlos told the story of how he stumbled on Gregory one day, early in the 70s, smoking a wrap of herb. Gregory told Don Carlos that what he was holding in his hand was not for him and warned him never to try drugs, ever. This was a tragic irony when we consider what happened to Gregory just 10 years later. Nobody can really tell the exact time Gregory Isaacs got hooked on cocaine, but all accounts from people closest to him point to the period when he bagged his first international record deal with Virgin Records subsidiary in 1978. Incidentally, it was the same period that his close friend Dennis Brown also started using cocaine while on a US tour. After an unsuccessful stint recording for different producers since the age of 18, Gregory teamed up with singer Errol Dunkley to form the African Museum Record Store and label in 1973 and released an astonishing volume of records that would become big hits in Jamaica and made Gregory one of the major stars on the island. But he soon got his first taste of international success courtesy of his good friend Dennis Brown. In 1977, Dennis Brown had moved to England and established his label DEB Records in London. The same year, Dennis invited Gregory to sign a record deal under his label. The result of this partnership was the fabulous Mr. Isaacs album, which introduced Gregory to UK audiences and was one of the foundations of that country's love affair with lovers rock, which endures till this day. Gregory's successful entry into the UK market caught the attention of Richard Branson's Frontline Records, which signed him up in 1978, and he released the Cool Ruler album in the same year, followed by the brilliant Soon Forward in 1979. Those two albums really launched his brand internationally, and he began to be in demand more and more by international concert promoters. Gregory's allure was plain to see. He was not only in possession of an achingly amazing sweet voice, he had the swagger and seductive stage presence that drove women crazy at his shows. And it's common knowledge that when the ladies flock to a place, the men are sure to follow. This translated to more tickets sold at every concert and was every concert promoter's dream. This high demand for Gregory tripled with the release of his next two albums, Lonely Lover in 1980 and More Gregory in 1981. He was now a superstar and began to roll in elite circles in Jamaica and in cities around the world. Gregory was now hanging out uptown, but unfortunately, cocaine turned out to be the most popular pastime of the elites and uptown crowds, and Gregory took to it more and more as his profile kept rising. But outsiders barely noticed. Dr. Dredd, the CEO of Brass Records, who was a close pal of Gregory, revealed that Isaacs confided in him that one other major reason why he took to drugs so much was simply to cope with all the pressures and trappings of fame, most especially the women who chased after him day and night and made him turn to drugs to handle the pressure. But outsiders barely noticed that Gregory was slowly becoming an addict. He was effortlessly managing multiple roles as a singer, songwriter, record store and label owner, businessman, and soon-to-be husband. One day in 1981, he went to the popular Randy's record store in Kingston and set eyes on a beautiful 21-year-old lady named June Wyndham. It was love at first sight for Gregory, and he struck up a conversation with June, who was then a student at a teacher's training college. The pair started dating and got married in 1982, around the same time Gregory signed for Island Records. According to June Isaacs in a recent interview, Gregory Isaacs was the perfect man, husband, and father, and she had no idea that he was already a regular cocaine user. He taught her how to cook, showered her with love and attention, and wouldn't even let her touch a cigarette. But slowly, his personality just changed. He began to distance himself from his old friends and began to get close to some strange new faces that she wasn't comfortable with. He would spend less and less time at home and would sometimes disappear for days. She eventually caught him using drugs and was devastated. After recording the songs that would make up Gregory's first album for Island Records in the amazing Night Nurse album, the Jamaican police had caught wind of Gregory's excesses and raided his home. Cocaine and illegal firearms were found in his house, leading to his arrest and jail time. And while he was locked away, the Night Nurse album became a smash hit around the world. After a few months, he was released and went right back to work like he had always done, recording, writing, and touring the globe to the great delight of his fans. But behind closed doors, his crack habit was getting worse and alienating the people closest to him. At the same time, Dennis Brown was experiencing the same battle with drugs. After Night Nurse, the quality of his music had begun to dip as a result of his addiction, and his life was slowly falling apart. But by 1988, Gregory had started fighting to get crack out of his system. Thanks to his wife, he tried to get treatment and made attempts to get into rehab. In that year, he came clean about his drug problem in an interview published in the Jamaican Gleaner newspaper on July 31st, 1988. It was testament to his greatness and fighting spirit that he opened up about his problem, despite the obvious risks to his career. He came clean about how drugs had destroyed his relationships and compromised his Rastafarian ideals. He also sounded a warning to future celebrities, stating that he had always condemned cocaine use before he could afford it. Gregory seemed to have turned a corner in his fight to be free, and even released a song titled Hard Drugs, which warned about the dangers of what he had been through. But sadly, the habit just overpowered Gregory again, and he became a full-blown junkie. He had always managed to balance his drug use with his work, but he had started to frustrate concert promoters out of wanting to work with him, as he became more and more unreliable, missing flights for overseas shows and even concerts in Jamaica. To fund his habit, he began to record music at an astonishing rate, and with this surge in quantity, it led to a sharp decline in quality that didn't go unnoticed by his fans. It's been estimated that he recorded an astonishing 500 albums in his career. He also had several close shaves and was frequently on the run from promoters for accepting money for shows and never turning up. And by the 1990s, he was in such bad shape that his dreadlocks had begun to fall out as his body had grown progressively weaker. So he shaved his head and began to sport a low cut, to the utmost shock of his fans. And by the end of the decade, his lifelong friend Dennis Brown died of respiratory issues exacerbated by long-term drug use in 1999. This stunned Gregory, but not enough to get him clean, and by the 2000s, the drugs had taken away the sweet quality in his voice, and he struggled badly at live shows to perform like he used to do. And to make matters worse, most of his teeth fell out in 2007, and he could barely hold things together. He still, however, had a fanatical fan base of loyal fans who bought tickets to his shows despite him being a shadow of his former self. In 2008, doctors found a tumor in his lung in its very early stages, but given his mental and general state, he ignored it until it had spread throughout his body and eventually took his life on the 25th of October 2010 in London. That was the end of Gregory Isaacs, one of the most dashing and talented men to ever come out of Jamaica. His decline and demise reads like a tragedy and is a cautionary tale about the evils of drug abuse. But for all of his faults, he showed a bravery and honesty that is rarely seen in artists of his caliber, as he was among the few to openly own up about his drug addiction. And through all the bizarre episodes in his life, he was described by those closest to him as a really good man, who, despite suffering titanic challenges and huge personal demons, did his best to live up to the standards of a loyal friend, gentleman, and consummate artist. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.